Thank you. Thanks everyone for joining this afternoon and welcome to our informational webinar on BioMade's Project Call 5. My name is Penny Norquist. I'm a program director in technology at BioMade. I'll also be joined today by David Nathan, who's a senior program manager in BioMade, and Laura Vitko, who's our director of strategic partnerships. And would like to welcome Steve Preddy and some of his colleagues from the National Science Foundation that'll be joining us as well to talk about an exciting opportunity and partnership we have with them for this project call. A few things to note as we go through today's agenda. This session is being recorded and will be shared on biomade.org. So it's important to note that the webinar will be open to both BioMade members and non-members. We'll go over in the webinar a few details about a little bit of background on BioMade, the project call itself. We'll hear from NSF about our collaboration, and then David will go through the materials that are included in the current request for proposals around the guidelines and timeline and understanding the next steps towards submitting a proposal. And then Laura will join us to talk about membership within BioMade. Throughout the presentation, if you have questions, please put them in the chat and we can address those once we get through the presentation portion of today. If we don't have time to cover all of your questions, no worries. You can always reach out to BioMade after the webinar, and we'll do our best to also update a frequently asked questions document that we'll post on the website as well. So a little bit about BioMade. BioMade is a public-private partnership that was launched in 2001. We have the goal of advancing domestic production of bioindustrial manufacturing. Our mission is to enable that domestic bioindustrial manufacturing, develop technologies that enhance U.S. bioindustrial competitiveness, de-risk investment in relevant infrastructure, and expand the biomanufacturing workforce to realize the economic promise of industrial biomanufacturing. BioMade is building a robust bioindustrial manufacturing ecosystem, and we have a national network of over 300 members spanning industry, academia, and nonprofit organizations. And our primary aim is to accelerate the commercialization of new bioindustrial manufacturing technologies by guiding them through pilot scale biomanufacturing readiness levels. We call those and would refer to them later in the presentation as bio-MRLs 4 through 7. And really our direct outcome of these efforts will be to develop and expand industrial and defense-related biomanufacturing in the U.S. We do this by leveraging DoD funds and in-kind support from our member organizations to complete projects that are critical to domestic bioindustrial manufacturing. And project calls is one of those ways that we're able to identify and advance those projects from our ecosystem. BioMade has 3 program areas: technology and innovation, education and workforce development, and safety, security, sustainability, and social responsibility, also called 4S. It's important to know that we just recently launched with our technology RFP. We have also launched RFPs for all of the program areas. So there will currently be 4 project calls that will be open for submission: technology and innovation for projects that also want to include the collaboration with NSF for funding, education, workforce development, and 4S. So it's important to note that today we'll talk about the technology and innovation and the technology and innovation and NSF projects. There's a separate webinar tomorrow that will go over the RFP and information for the education, workforce, and 4S project calls. So, and when you submit your proposal, it'll be important to ensure that you're submitting to the correct project call. So for our Tech Project Call 5.0, for this project call, we are seeking innovations that address the project call focus areas. There are 3 of them that I will walk through in just a moment. Proposers also have the exciting opportunity with this call to submit an integrated project that spans bio-MRL levels from foundational research that can be supported through the National Science Foundation, in addition to work that would be typically funded through BioMade projects in that MRL 4 to 7 range. This call is open to BioMaid members who are in good standing. The NSF funding option is also open to anyone who is an NSF eligible organization. So if you are only requesting NSF funding under this within the project, then you do not need to be a member. Funding for projects is anticipated to be about $2 million in total cost per project. Our typical project would be 18 to 24 months in time. And then BioMaid projects require a one-to-one cost share on the BioMaid funding. So for every dollar in the project that our members put into the project, BioMaid then matches that with funding. The overall timeline for this call, the request for proposals have been released. The submission portal for turning in a white paper will be open beginning December 13th. Proposals will be due on January 22nd. David will talk a little bit more about how to submit those and the next steps in that process. General timing for full proposals will be open from March 7th to April 18th, with the proposals due on the 18th. Those are also submitted through our online submission portal. And anticipated timing for notification of funding would be in June to September. So there's three focus areas for this particular project call. Projects that are submitting to the call should address at least one of the focus areas. It's okay to address more than one, but it does need to address at least one of the three. And the focus areas for the call are driven through the committees within BioMaid. So ideas for project call topics bubble up through our BioMaid technical subcommittee and then are approved through our BioMaid technical committee. So the focus areas for this particular call, the first is data acquisition for AI, ML predictive modeling. The second is reducing drivers of cost. The third is standardization of TEA guidelines. And then a couple other things to note on BioMaid projects for them to be in scope. They do need to focus on bioindustrial manufacturing, which if you're in this field, you know applies to a wide variety of applications and different areas. That I'd say the one space that it typically does not apply to for us is if the project is purely biopharmaceutical. Projects also should align with our BioMaid technical roadmap. Our technical roadmap, the 3.0 version of that was just ratified this week by our technical committee, and we will have that available to those who are interested. To members, it's available on our member portal. You can also reach out to BioMaid about obtaining a copy of that once the white paper submission portal is open. In the interest of time for today, I won't spend a large amount of time on each one of the focus areas, but this language is pulled directly from the request for proposals. So I would point to that to spend a little bit more time, but just from a broader perspective, the first focus area is looking at there's a large amount of data that's generated in fermentation systems. We're interested in understanding or having teams look at proposals that could help aid the collection, the quality of that data, the collection of that data, and then the ability to use and collect large amounts of data that could then be analyzed or of use in our artificial intelligence, machine learning, predictive modeling. The second technical focus area looks at reducing drivers of cost. So this can be very broad. This could include aspects of first understanding and having more quantitative measures of what is driving cost within the system, looking at opportunities to reduce that cost either through the inputs into the system, so feedstock costs, or the cost of manufacturing, producing materials, so things reducing costs through the different process unit operations such as downstream processing, fermentation, and also coming up again with tools to be able to understand ultimately in resources like a techno-economic model, how that is being incorporated. And then the third area is to look at standardization tools for techno-economic analyses. The use of TEA has really expanded within the ecosystem, but there's still opportunities to improve that by helping standardize the type of information that's being collected, methodologies, databases that could be valuable inputs into TEA analyses, and looking at perhaps special use cases, novel systems that don't fit kind of a typical TEA model. So at that, I'll pass actually over to Steve Peretti to talk a little bit about the collaboration that we have on this project call with NSF.
Thanks, Penny. So yeah, let's go to the next slide. So the collaboration was announced through a Dear Colleague letter that was published about a month ago. And basically what we're trying to do is encourage collaborations between folks working on more fundamental work, basic researchers, and folks who are doing more translationally focused research. And so we thought this was a great way to pull together the MRL level 4.7 work that BioMaid normally funds or does fund, and the MRL 1 through 3 level work that NSF normally supports in a way that is, in a way, it's kind of directive for our research community because they're smart. They can do a lot of different things. And tying them to a BioMaid project with downstream needs and providing sort of support for fundamental questions that arise as a result of that downstream development work is a great way for them to focus on this is industrially relevant. It's also very fundamental. And so it's serving to expand our knowledge base in general and also to support some really good translational work. And so we will be jointly supporting projects with BioMaid. I say upstream and downstream, but I should say lower and higher level MRL. Let's go to the next slide. This is just sort of the concept, rather than doing some work at NSF, hoping that it's got a translational home somewhere and then trying to find a home either with BioMaid or with someone else who supports more translationally focused work. This is a way for that to be much more seamless and coordinated. And so there will be, coordinated applications, as you can see in the description of the call, that both BioMaid and NSF will be receiving in tandem. The evaluation timeline that Penny described, we will be following that in terms of once the full proposals come in, we will be reviewing them. We will be making our funding decisions as closely to that timeline as we can. We're committed to do that so that the project gets off to a start on both ends at the same time and runs concurrently. Next slide. You've seen this already, but just sort of how would you go about doing this? The white paper is submitted to BioMaid. It is not submitted to NSF. BioMaid will share that information with NSF. BioMaid will do an evaluation of relevance to the project call. NSF program directors will do an evaluation of relevance or within the scope of core programs at NSF so that we can both say, yes, this is something in which NSF has a strong interest, and this is something that is relevant to the project call as BioMaid deems it. And don't go to the next one yet. One point I wanted to make is that if it turns out that you submit a joint project and NSF doesn't think that it's particularly within scope, but BioMaid does, this third bullet here, BioMaid can go ahead and just request a standard full proposal for the MRL 4.7 as usual. So this is not, there's no penalty involved in submitting something that we don't think fits any of the core program interests. Okay, now next. We will be issuing specific instructions regarding how to do this parallel submission to the project call and to NSF
So yeah,
when
yes, just me. We had the monument meeting yesterday. I think Burns gave an update on that.
Hi, can we, yeah, thank you. I think we had a hot mic. If you can just make sure to mute. Thank you.
Okay. Specific instructions will be posted or distributed with the full proposal invitation. So you'll have more direction about how to submit your proposals to NSF as well as to Biomaid. But the NSF proposal will be sort of standard form. You'll describe both aspects of the project, both the lower and the higher MRL level. And if there is some proprietary information that is necessary for the MRL 4 through 7 that an industrial collaborator is not comfortable sharing, you can exclude that information from the NSF proposal. Okay, that's going to be acceptable. The budget you'll submit to NSF will just be for the NSF supported work, but in additional documents, you will submit the Biomaid activity budget as well, and you'll discuss the scope of work for both of those. So it will not be part of the standard or the 15-page proposal package. It will be a separate document that will be available to us. Okay, next slide. For those of you who have not seen NSF review before, we have, in a way, sort of simple review criteria: intellectual merit and broader impacts. And for both of those, we are looking for how do we explore creative original concepts? Do we have a good plan to carry them out? Do we have well-qualified individuals, and are there adequate resources? Does it benefit society? Does it benefit the larger project objectives? Next slide. And I think this is the last slide I'm going to talk about. Yeah, and for determining scope of project, as you start to put your ideas together, the programs that are initially identified as being likely to be relevant were systems and synthetic biology in the molecular and cellular bioscience division, and David Rockcliffe and David Klinke are the two folks that you should get in touch there. There are a number of ones in the chemical, bioengineering, environmental, and transport system division in the engineering directorate. And then depending on what the particular project is, my program, cellular and biochemical engineering, disability and rehabilitation engineering, environmental sustainability, process systems and reaction engineering, nanoscale interactions and biosensing. So if you think, oh, gee, I'm developing a bunch of biosensing work, talk to Alex, and so on. So those will be folks that can give you some feedback about the NSF portion being within scope prior to the submission of the initial white paper. And I think that's it.
That's great. Thank you, Steve. We're very excited about this opportunity at Biomaid. As Steve mentioned, just to integrate the project work that's happening, when we look at those focus areas and we look at content that's within the technical roadmap that's been developed by our ecosystem, we know there's work that really spans all of the MRL levels, and this is a really exciting opportunity to be able to support effort across the whole scale and then integrate those projects together so that we get more translation of work into higher levels towards commercialization. So thank you, Steve. Thank you, NSF, for joining us today. I'm now going to have David Nathan walk through the pieces around the guidelines for submitting the proposal.
Hello, everyone. For those of you I haven't met, I'm David Nathan, Senior Technical Program Manager here at Biomaid. I get the fun job of going through the technical details of how to submit a proposal. So with the next slide, please, we'll jump right in. So it's a two-stage submission process. There's a white paper followed by a full proposal. The white paper, as you can see, is about a 5-page, maybe 5.5-page document, high-level descriptions of the project. We are always interested in talking with people who want to submit in advance of their submission to give you our thoughts and feedback before you submit. We do then select proposals to move forward from white paper to full proposals. That is obviously a much more detailed submission, up to 16 pages in length, including a full budget. Both white papers and full proposals are subject to a technical review. The rubric is provided in the project call. It is similar to previous rubrics, but has been updated. And we review with subject matter experts for technical merit, programmatic merit, and project impact. Other members do not see your proposals. It is reviewed by BioMade, in this case, NSF exclusively. Next slide, please. Again, some of the dates you've already seen. To be clear, white paper submission opens December 13th, excuse me. White papers are due by 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time on January 22nd. In early March, we will notify white paper advance or declines to full proposal to all people who've submitted white papers. Next slide, please. Again, the scoring rubric that BioMade uses, this is similar. The weights may have changed a little bit from prior project calls. Additional details, so each sort of macro section here has some breakouts into what do we mean at these different categories, like fit to BioMade mission and project call focus is broken down into some areas. Those detailed scoring criteria can be provided at the full project call, and you can follow the link at this once we publish this, or just go to biomade.org and you should be able to find your way there. Next slide, please. So this comes up a lot in project calls. This is a high-level discussion of what a team composition can look like for a project. Every project should have one lead organization. That's the prime driver that is designing and implementing the project. Partner organizations contribute to project and execution. They may receive funding from BioMade to support activities. They often also contribute cost share. It's a collaborative partner who you're working with to solve technical problems. That's differentiated. A partner organization on a BioMade project does need to be a member. The question just came in, does every project need a partner organization? Every project does not need a partner organization, although we highly recommend it and suggest it. Partners would need to be BioMade members. The exception here is if the partner is doing the NSF portion of the work exclusively and not being funded by BioMade, then they do not need to be members. Vendors are a step down. They don't need to be members of BioMade to be on a project. It's a much cleaner definition. You're submitting part of the project to somebody for contract work that they do, submitting things to a lab for analysis, purchasing a piece of equipment or a service that somebody does on a regular basis and is not key to the IP or intellectual property or technology development of the project. And then there's also a window here for independent consultants who work on a fee basis and can support a project, but don't necessarily need to be members. Again, there's more detail here. As always, if you have questions, please reach out to proposals@biomade.org. You'll be connected, or we can get you connected with a program manager who can talk through your specific situation and help you work through if you're having trouble working through this matrix. Next slide, please. So project cost share. So the three words here, it needs to be allowable, needs to be allocable. I don't know if I always say that one right, and reasonable. Kind of use that those three legs to help assess if your cost share makes sense. There's a minimum requirement of a one-to-one cost share. That means you can add more cost share than you're getting paid, but you need to be matching every federal dollar with $1 of cost share at least. And federal dollars, so money coming from other federal agencies, cannot be used as cost share. It doesn't have to be cash. It can be in-kind resources. It can be time on equipment, things like that. Again, if you have questions, specific situation, please reach out to proposals that we can talk through. In terms of building a budget, and this applies a little bit more, applies to full proposals, as we don't always get a fully finished budget at white paper stage. But if you have interest in creating an indirect cost rate, you can negotiate with BioMaid. We will work with you to build an indirect cost rate. This facilitates building out budgets. It makes it a little bit easier to deal with indirect costs. You can reach out to finrequest@biomaid.org to start that process. And again, if you don't have or don't care to negotiate a rate with BioMaid, you can use a de minimis, or you can use a federally negotiated indirect rate. We do accept those as well, if you have one. Another piece I'd like to point out, any foreign participation on your project requires DoD approval. Whether that is a foreign vendor that you're buying something from, whether that is foreign nationals who are going to be key elements of the project, the sooner you can identify that with us. And again, if you have questions, please reach out to proposals@biomaid.org. We can start working through those risks in a project proposal. The DoD has gotten very careful about reviewing and approving any foreign participation on projects. So next slide, please. From a contracting standpoint, and now we're moving a little bit farther ahead into full proposal, we expect anybody under contracting to comply with all award conditions, oversight, and reporting requirements from BioMaid. For those who have not contracted with BioMaid previously, typical is a monthly meeting with your program manager. There are monthly and quarterly reports due using templates submitted to the program manager. There's usually also an expectation of some at the monthly meeting or in the reports, or both, some technical and detailed technical information on how the project is going. Communication plan deliverable is due in the last 3 months of the project, period of performance. And specifically, we're looking for, as part of these, right, what's coming back to the ecosystem, and how is it going to be shared. We also expect BioMaid to be acknowledged in publications arising from the award, and that will be in the subaward terms and conditions. The other is that I will mention that once we are under contract, it is science, things change, we learn things, we know this. If the statement of work or the budget is changing in a way that we say affects greater than 10% of the budget, or you can apply that loosely to a statement of work, we generally then work through an award modification to reflect the change. If it's a smaller change within that, that's usually something you and your program manager can just agree on, just to give some guidelines in terms of scope change, because we know that happens over the life of a project. Again, I don't want to go into too much detail here, but just we are aware that it happens and we have plans to work through it. Next slide, please. All right, this one is important. All organizations seeking BioMaid funding must be BioMaid members in good standing. That means you need to have a signed membership agreement at the time of white paper submission. It also means that you are a member of good standing, which means you've continued to pay annual dues throughout the life of the project. The exception to this one, because of the NSF component, is a partner member on a project doesn't necessarily, or a partner on a project does not necessarily have to be a BioMaid member if they are only receiving funding from the NSF as a part of this project. If they are expecting to be receiving funding from BioMaid for MRL work that is in the 4 through 7 range, they do need to be members. Next slide, please. Again, just some more details on the eligibility and membership requirements. We expect dues to be paid if you're a new member or your dues are coming due by February 6th to participate in the call. Training tier members are not eligible to lead a tech or innovation project or contribute to technology development efforts. and finance tier members are not eligible for institute project benefits or cannot participate in a Project Call 5 opportunity. So that's a very technical definition on some of the membership levels. And Laura's going to touch on some of this as well. Again, I'll just touch on this from a NSF standpoint. NSF funding may be awarded to any NSF eligible institution, regardless of their status of BioMade member. So you can be a BioMade member and receive NSF funds. You can also not be a BioMade member and receive NSF funds. But I will say again, one organization of a team that includes an NSF portion has to be a BioMade member at the time of submission, as the proposals must be submitted through BioMade's submission platform on the member portal. If you are looking for just NSF funding exclusively, we think there's other avenues to do that outside of this call. And again, I think I stated the other point before. And then I think we're about done here, but proposals are submitted via the member portal. Proposal applications must use provided templates. They are on the portal and adhere to administrative guidelines. Again, any individual must be affiliated with a current BioMade member organization to have access to the portal, hence the requirement to have BioMade membership as part of the team. And new or renewing BioMade members can make sure to get access to the portal in time to submit proposals, again, at memberportal@biomade.org, or again, the kind of one-stop shop, if you're not sure, I would say is go to proposals@biomade.org and we will get you to the right location. But again, all submissions will be through the BioMade member portal. So having somebody who is a member and has access is critical to be able to submit a proposal, a white paper, or ultimately a full proposal for this call. And with that, I will turn it over to Laura, who will talk a little bit about membership benefits and membership in BioMade.
Hi, thank you, David. So just briefly to advocate for membership, I know we have many members on the call, so thank you for your support and engagement in BioMade. For those of you that are not yet members and are considering this opportunity, I'd strongly encourage membership, even if you are only interested in the NSF component of the project. There are many great ways to engage with BioMade. Applying for this project call funding through Institute project calls is just one benefit. We also connect our members to directed project opportunities, as well as help them build relationships with R&D partners, workforce development professionals, and with staff within the US government. So we have many engagement activities throughout the year. Members hold seats on BioMade's working groups, subcommittees, and governance committees, and those are great ways to build professional development skills, as well as to build a network of relationships. We have other activities throughout the year, such as application workshops, events, webinars, and we really hope that you consider the value of membership as you consider this opportunity and ways to further build a network of resources and relationships. Next slide, please. So I wanted to talk about some of the logistical pieces of a membership here, just very briefly. BioMade has multiple tiers of membership to choose from, but these are based on the organization's type, the size, and specific access to those highest value benefits at select tiers. So how we would define a startup tier member or startup company would be pre-revenue companies with 20 or fewer full-time employees. We have another membership tier for small businesses called the affiliate tier. And for mid-sized to large companies, we have 3 tiers with different ranked benefits at the silver, gold, and platinum tiers. Next slide, please. For the other types of membership that are what we would call non-industry members, we have a very accessible tier for community colleges and small nonprofits called the training tier. That provides access to BioMade's education and workforce development program funding calls and to those program area activities. For academic partners such as R1 and R2 universities, we have 2 tiers to choose from, the participating tier and governing tier. we have another tier available to FFRDCs and national labs. And then we have a tier available for economic development organizations, business leagues, and feedstock associations called the Agriculture and Business Association tier. Lastly, I want to highlight a great pilot program that BioMade just rolled out called the MSI membership tiers. So these membership tiers provide a pathway for minority serving institutions that are either a R2 university or two-year college to join BioMade through fully in-kind contributions. So if you have any questions about these tiers or member benefits, please reach out to membership@biomade.org. Next slide. And so just briefly, the process to join as a member, it's very straightforward, but you do want to allow yourself adequate time to review the membership agreement materials. So the membership agreement packet will include an agreement form, the membership terms and conditions, and an IP management plan. I want to emphasize that the terms and conditions and IP management plan are community documents that all members agree to. If you are interested in how IP applies to a specific project, you would talk to the proposals team about that. For the process, you would submit an application at biomade.org/membership. Our team would review that application and follow up with the agreement materials and more guidance on how to move forward. We are also happy to set up a meeting to further talk about the different tiers and benefits with you and your colleagues. The final process to formalize membership is to return a signed membership agreement to BioMade. And so for any organization that wants to join in time for this project call, you would want to make sure to return that to BioMade by January 17th. Next slide, please. So I hope you will join BioMade. We'd love to have you be part of our ecosystem and work with you both on this opportunity and future member activities. And again, please reach out to membership@biomade.org with any questions. Thank you.
Great, thank you, David, and thank you, Laura. I'm going to go through a few quick resources, and then we'll get to the portion of the webinar where we can address any questions that have come into the chat. We talked about IP, and so and Laura discussed BioMade's intellectual management plan. This is a short video just to highlight that IPMP. It's also to highlight that on our website, we have several of these brief videos that talk about different aspects of project calls and the proposal process at BioMade. There's one related to cost share. So they're a good resource as well. And I am going to hit play, and Perrin will let me know if the sound is not working. That was one thing that delayed our start a little bit. So
Yeah, can the speaker unmute herself? We cannot hear anything.
The audio on the video is not coming through, Penny, just so you know.
Thank you. I did. Sorry about that. I thought it was coming through. So thank you for the heads up. We will just make sure that we share that that is available online. So we can walk through the IPMP at that point. I'm gonna imagine, we're gonna move on. It's probably best just to have everyone go and look at that versus looking here. There, as it's mentioned in the video, there is definitions for the different parts of the IPMP. And again, the program managers at Biomade, if you reach out to proposals@biomade.org, are a great resource for helping talk through any of the IP. Just looking at how to look at including that in your proposal or address any questions that you might have. So in terms of resources at Biomade, the program managers, and as Steve mentioned at NSF, we also have the list of contacts to the different program areas to reach out to talk about your project ideas. We can at least help provide some input in terms of kind of crafting and also address questions or perhaps making connections around building a team together for your proposal. There are those how-to videos that are available on the Biomade website. The member portal is also a good resource to look at past projects. Our website also has a description of projects that we have funded in past project calls. And then we have an FAQ also up on the website under the project calls. And then wanted to quick highlight the tech roadmap since we did just ratify a new version. As I said, that'll be available when the white paper submission portal opens. But just to give a very high level view, for those who are not familiar with it, the roadmap is organized around technical needs within the bioindustrial community that have been generated by the ecosystem with input from our members, government, industry, academia, a variety of inputs. And they are organized around different innovation areas through out the pathway towards commercialization. So in terms of the broad modules, we call them, around manipulate, accumulate, de-risk, and execute, and then commercial readiness. Today, please join us. Teaming is an important aspect of project calls as you're looking at combining early MRL work with later MRL work, also just putting teams together to look at advancing your technologies. Join us today in just a short period of time. We have teaming slides from a variety of different organizations that have submitted them that will be presenting on their capabilities and interest in partnering. Tomorrow there are webinars, both an informational one like our technical one today, and a teaming webinar that will be held for the EWD and 4S program areas. And then just note, we have Biomade has an annual meeting that happens in April. It will be the 29th and 30th this year in Minnesota. It's a great chance to have members collaborate and learn more about the various initiatives across the ecosystem. With that, I'm going to unshare my screens and we can look at, I think, starting initially with the any questions that are in the chat. Okay.
I think we've managed to answer some of them in the chat live as we go. But if you threw one out there that you didn't feel it was addressed fully or didn't get addressed at all, now's a good opportunity to either throw it back in there or raise your hand.
I'm just scrolling as I go down. So the NSF funding is available to any NSF eligible organization. I can maybe pause and see if our NSF colleagues would like to add anything to that in terms of who's eligible.
Yeah, this is essentially an unsolicited proposal to NSF. And so you would use the proposal and awards policy and planning guide. The PAPG is going to be the controlling document as usual. There's nothing exotic about the NSF proposal per se.
To the question about MRL level, we do not anticipate in a project that you need to advance all the way from a 1 to 7. It's quite typical in projects to maybe advance 1 MRL level, or more is great. But I would say there should be aspects of the different, for an integrated project, there should be aspects of the two. And then remember, they do need to be integrated. So think about how is learning from one translating to the other and sort of back and forth. So there's no requirement in terms of having to move a certain amount through MRL levels. It's just that to be within scope for BioMade funding, the MRL level of the technology should be primarily in 4 through 7. And then NSF supports the lower MRL work.
Yeah,
I
I would
did-
say if you think about this more as a design, build, test, learn cycle, some of the folks are going to be in the cycle are going to be at MRL 1, 2, 3 for some of the questions. And some of the questions are going to be, and the testing and learning are going to be at MRLs 4 through 7.
I see a couple hands, so I think Michael, let's start. Actually, it's 2 Michaels. Let's start with JHU, Michael from JHU, and then.
I'm trying to hi, thanks, Penny and Steve. As you guys probably already know, I'm really excited about this program. I think it's as you both know. One question that I have, which might be a general question. I have some specific questions, but it sounds like we maybe need to satisfy both BioMade and NSF to make it to the second round. Can you maybe expand a little bit on that? It sounds like we need to make you guys both happy to make it to the second round. So I would like to expand a little bit on that. Thanks. Over.
Yeah, let me take a first response to that, and then I'll pause and see if Steve would like to add anything in addition. So there still are from the BioMade perspective, there still are 2 calls here. So you can apply to a BioMade as we do with our past project calls. Work that's in that 4 through 7 can be applied. For wanting to include integrated aspects that would be funded through NSF. That's also a separate project. So that I view it as 2 calls. As Steve mentioned, we will both be reviewing the aspects of those calls that apply to like our area of expertise, right? So BioMade's going to be focused on are there aspects of this project that fit in that 4 through 7, and it looks like a good project for based on our reviewers. NSF will also look at it and say, does this seem to have merit in terms of something that NSF would fund? So in that case, yes, we are sort of converging then on what ideas best integrate those 2 together for the integrated projects.
Thank you.
And what I would say, Mike, is it's a scope question from the NSF side. Does it fit the project call? Requirements is really a sort of a BioMade question fundamentally. And then is the fundamental work that's proposed something that one of the core programs at NSF funds? If we can't find a fit, then, probably not. But that's really the first round question is just, is there a core program that would fund this kind of research?
Thank you.
Great.
May I go next?
Yes, please.
Mike Lottish from Purdue University, together with Karthik Sankar. Again, we're very excited about this program as well. And as you know, we're starting a study on enzyme-based biomanufacturing here, thanks to BioMade. The question I have, though, is for the NSF and the BioMade, I would call it synergy. It's very exciting. 2 questions. One is, are the budgets completely separate? Because BioMade has 50% cost share, NSF usually does not. And then second of all, when we have a document that combines NSF with BioMade, can we go so far as working with some of the industrial partners that we're now lining up to show how NSF fundamental research might advance after the fact, how BioMade is implementing some of the biomanufacturing at TLR 4 to 7.
Yeah.
Let me grab this one from an NSF side. Yes, NSF is not going to allow for cost share. And in terms of, can you show that kind of synergy. I mean, A, that's what we're looking for. B, if you think about the standard NSF proposal, it asks for broader impacts. Well, you know, what's a better, broader impact than, hey, it's supporting this very translational activity where there's high interest and high relevance. Like that's a fabulous broader impact of the technological work that NSF would be funding.
Thank you, Stephen. Yeah, I see that in my mind's eye now. Yeah.
That's
So
great.
long impact section. Yeah. The
Great
second
question. It's great. I was just going to add on that the budget templates will actually reflect that if you're looking at the NSF funding, that there's no cost share associated with that particular funding.
Mind if I go next?
Yes, Henry.
Thank you guys for the great presentation. I particularly enjoyed hearing about how this is all going to work together. I'm just a little bit confused here. So I asked the question about how research would work. Ideally, the response that I got here from David was that it would be parallelized between NSF and BioMaid. I'm kind of confused how that could work given NSF is looking for MRL or specifically TRL 1 through 3. BioMaid is looking for MRL 4 through 7 here. For example, we work on, first of a kind, ultra high temperature anaerobic digestion processes here. If we're at the lab scale currently, then how do you fit together fundamental or foundational research, but also scale up research through BioMaid? I would appreciate some clarification there.
Yep, again, I can jump in and then Steve can as well. I know it is a little tricky to think about how do you have things integrated. So it's not quite I would say we're trying to avoid some of the linear processes where maybe something sits in early MRL for a certain period of time and then kind of translates to the next stage. And we've seen this in BioMaid projects in the past where you may get to a point where you've started to scale up some work and you've identified, well, there are some strain improvements. I'm just giving an example that would be really important that could help advance or address some of the manufacturing issues we're seeing as we've moved towards pilot scale. We can't always fund that type of work because it's in an earlier or MRL stage. So this gives an opportunity to kind of say, like, how do we integrate work that's already happening and kind of Steve sort of talked about this in that design, build, test, learn sort of cycle. Like, what are things that you're learning in perhaps as you move higher that then can go back and influence some of the earlier work? Another example could be having work that maybe is more in parallel where some of the foundational research is going on like building databases or data sets, while also doing some actual like in-scale testing of a particular, I'm making it up, sensor application technology into a process that's already at pilot scale. And happy to set up time and talk through some other ideas as well.
Understood. So just to confirm here, the way that I understand this now is that, if we come into this having some portion of our technology de-risked, we should take what we have de-risked and then see about scaling it, getting the engineering and market de-risking done, and the parts of it that still need to be optimized can be done at a lab scale as well under the guise of the NSF. That makes sense.
That's so much better than I could have said it.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay, if I jump in, Penny?
Yes,
So-
of course. Yep.
So my question is, and I put in the chat, you mentioned that for the NSF requirement of the typical intellectual merit and broader impacts. My question is, are those required for all submissions, whether it's either more NSF focused or more BioMaid focused? And secondly, what about all the other requirements NSF typically has that are covered in like the PA, PPG and so forth? Like, is there guidance on that? And then thirdly, in the last question, so for BioMaid, we were told you do need cost shares typical, but if we're applying to NSF, it sounds like we don't. And I guess I'm still a little bit confused on that, especially if you have something that might be crossing the line between the two. So if there could be some clarification on the requirements around the typical NSF requirements and the cost share a little bit more, that'd be helpful. Thank you.
Yep. I'll maybe
You wanna
start
take
there.
this?
I'll maybe start there and go backwards. Start with the
Sure.
first question, then go back to the question on the intellectual merit. So the end goal, when we get to full proposals, the end goal will be, there will be work contracted with NSF for the early MRL work. There will be work contracted with BioMaid for the higher MRL work. And we want those pieces to be able to work together. So when you start thinking about the actual like statement of work that will happen on the project, they will be integrated or unified in a way. But they will be unified, but kind of also have to be broken down to be able to say what aspects are being covered under each. And then they will actually have separate budgets for the two. So it is correct that the NSF funding will not have any cost share associated with that. So that'll kind of be segregated, I'd say, when you look at the tasks that you have and then look at creating a budget for separating out those two tasks. The NSF portion would not have any cost share applied to it. I am going to pause and see if Steve wants to answer anything around intellectual, and then I will see if we didn't answer all your questions.
Right. I mean, this is still, the proposal to NSF is still a standard NSF proposal. So all the PAPPG requirements will hold. The difference, if you will, is that maybe now instead of a different set of broader impacts, the broader impact couple of pages you would write will be, here's what's going on in the MRL 47 in parallel with what I'm, what we're proposing to do. And there'll be a separate additional single document, single copy document where you'll submit the the BioMaid budget and maybe a little bit of statement of work distribution between the two. Not that any of NSF's funds will go to that, but just so that we can see the coordination. But this is still an NSF. I mean, if you've written collaborative proposals before, one university has their budget, the other university has their budget. This is one where one side of this project has an NSF budget, the other side of this project has a BioMaid budget and regulations for those things.
Thanks. And I think the last part I'll add is those components into submitting the NSF or at the time of full proposal. So not at the white paper.
Okay, thank you.
Looks like we have about 1 minute left. Just wanted to double check and see if there are any more last minute questions. Otherwise, I would want to say thank you to everyone for attending today. We're very excited about the launch of the project call, the focus areas that we have, the collaboration with NSF, and look forward. We get very excited about looking forward and seeing what project ideas come in. And likewise, all the resources listed that we've talked about in the webinar today, please reach out if there's any questions, and look forward to hearing more from everyone. Thank you.